Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Mims, and I'm here with Archbishop Edward A. McCarthy High School's Mod UN team. Just giving a little intro into this video. This was a Zoom lecture I did with some of our future Dells for our e-conference on May 2nd. That's already come and passed. This is just a video on how to do Crisis and how Crisis works out, and different tips and tricks from a fellow Munner. So yeah, let's get into it.
Hey everybody. So this is my little lecture, Writing Story People Want to Hear, Crisis and the Importance of Arcs by McCarthy Munn. So we had a question in the chat. I was asking whether or not crisis notes and letters, etc., like the directives. Okay, so we have like, when you're doing crisis, you have your separation of like what you're going to write. So you have your crisis notes, which are only between you and the background, like the backstaff, or you and another delegate. These are called joint notes that you can write together if you have like a specific thing you'd like to get accomplished together. Say like you and another delegate both care about like a war mission, so you're going to unite both of your troops to do like a certain thing. Or you have individual notes, which get across your own personal agenda, and then directives, which are passed by the whole group, which are like decisive action by everyone. So like if you're passing a directive, it's probably to solve a bigger issue in the whole group. If you're writing a crisis note, it's in order to take an action on one. Hey, PowerPoint. Ooh, I had another question. Yes. Okay. So how do your personal notes affect others? Okay, so your notes are going to create your own narrative, right? So we have as background our own personal agenda for how we want things to go and how we want the story to progress, but you guys are also going to come up with your own story. So like we're going to get there in a second on how you come up with your story, but your story is going to change the story of the room. So I'm going to give you guys like 5 seconds to like think of like what is the most compelling story you've ever like read, okay? Because like obviously one of the most fun things about Munn is telling the story. So just think for like a minute and a half about what the most compelling story you've ever heard is. Just tell me your exact idea.
This is gonna be like nerdy, but like I used to have this book of like stories by O. Henry, and there was one where like these guys kidnapped these kids, and the kids were so annoying that they just sent them back to the person that they kidnapped from because they were so friggin' annoying, and they ended up paying the people that they stole from, and I just found that really funny.
Okay, so what I'm getting from that is like it was a story that's different from the norm, you know, like you hear like a regular kidnapping story and then you're like, oh, okay, but that one was different because, like,
that's the whole point of his writing. Yeah, it's a twist, so I really liked it.
I forgot it. Oh, my video's on. Yeah, I forgot her name. The story with, I think somebody knows it. They turned it into a TV show. The girl where she's with, like her mom faked her disease and then she ended up teaming up with the boyfriend to kill her.
Yes.
That story
yes.
is so crazy.
Okay, so that's actually like a real life thing, which was so crazy. But again, what I'm getting from that is like it's stories that are different than like boring narratives. You know, you take something that's normal and then you switch it. So yeah, that's kind of what I was like trying to get with this. So like the best thing about a crisis arc is it's a story that you get to tell. Basically, in the simplest terms, there's 3 arcs in the room. Okay, well, really there's like 25 depending on how many people are in your room, but there's 3 arcs. There's your arc, there's the arc of the room, and then there's everyone else's. To you, everyone else's doesn't really matter. Because Munn is about 2 main things. It's about compromise, it's about congeniality. Compromise in quotation marks because it really just means getting your way in the nicest way possible. And congeniality and just making people not think that you're a terrible person while you're doing it. So, tips for making your arc. The biggest tip I can give you is research. Right here, research, more research, storyboard win. All right, I'm gonna tell you guys a little story. I was at Feynman this year, and one of the guys in my room who ended up winning Best Dell, he was researching 4 nights beforehand on what he wanted his arc to be about. So we were in the Crucible, so it was obviously set in Salem, Massachusetts. He was researching into Salem, Massachusetts, and found out that the charter for Salem, Massachusetts was written to the governor, right? And the governor was a fraud. He had no wealth in and of himself. So he wrote his entire arc about blackmailing the governor because the governor was a fraud. He wouldn't have known that if he had research. He wouldn't have known that if he delved in. Like, the biggest thing I can tell you about Model UN is, like, if you don't research, you're not going to succeed. And that's, like, what we as backroom want to see. We want to see you researching. We want to see you, like, working hard, and we want to see you knowing information that you wouldn't have just gotten, you know? And we want to see you using that. So here's my tips.
And can I ask a question? Sorry.
You're totally good.
How did he like use that in the conference though? Like, how did he actually use that in the crisis to help him win?
Okay, so one of the craziest things about crisis arcs, and one of the things that like sucks if you're a very nosy person or if you like knowing information about other people, you're never gonna know anybody's arc unless they tell you it or it comes explicitly out in committee. The way he ended up using it is he started writing notes. First, he wrote one to the desk of the governor, basically saying, like, if you don't obey me from here on out, I'm going to expose you. And so from then on out for the rest of committee, he had, like, his portfolio power was everything the governor had. So he established in his first note that he was basically governor of Massachusetts. And then from then on, he wrote a crisis note to an actor, hiring him to play the governor so that he would come out and be like, hey, I want everybody to start a revolution. And one delegate created an entire American Revolution arc in the room. So it's all about how you end up using the powers you have. Obviously, like within our crisis, you guys are going to be literal gods. So we're going to allow you to have a lot of power. But you're going to have to know how to use it, you know? It doesn't matter if you can control the heavens, control the skies, or control anything else if you're not going to use it properly. Do you have questions? Yes.
Yeah, what's a portfolio power? Like, what is that?
So, say I'm like the president of the United States. My portfolio powers are that I am commander of the armed forces, that I am the president of the United States, that I make executive decisions. So your portfolio powers are whatever you have as a delegate that you can use like for yourself. It's the powers that you hold. So like, we're going to get later on, you're going to see what kind of notes you need to send and what kind of information you need to gain immediately so that you can find out what your portfolio powers are. But the reason we ask for position papers is so that you can establish some of your portfolio powers. What my first one? So my first one, be selfish in the nicest way possible. You obviously want to get your points across and you obviously want to be listened to, but nobody wants to listen to that one delegate that's constantly screaming and that's constantly being rude and aggressive. That goes on to my second point, which is be diplomatic but firm. Again, you obviously want to get your points across, and we all understand, like, you know, getting snubbed sometimes, but, like, you have to understand the difference between being aggressive as a delegate and being effective. Third, make yourself central to the storyline. I cannot tell you how many times Backroom told me at Feynman that the reason I didn't die was because I was too important. When you make yourself central to a storyline, one, you don't die because nobody, like, they're not going to kill you in Backroom if you're so successful. But also, like, if you're not constantly speaking, if you're not constantly writing, you fall back into just the mix and crisis staff isn't going to notice you as much. And obviously, like, if you're doing this, you want to, like, have fun with it. It's no fun to just sit in the back and just, like, do nothing for 8 hours at a conference, you know? Fourth, don't count on somebody dying or being killed. Like, these aren't the best ways to set up your arcs. You need to set up your arcs with research, obviously, but you can't, like, count on the death of something or, like, yourself getting killed. Also, speaking of this, if you're going to try and kill a delegate, if that delegate handles it properly, you're handing them first place. If you are killed off and then you immediately, like, within 5 minutes, your portfolio power changes, but you handle it like a god, like, the crisis staff is going to love you. They're going to see that you are able to adapt, which is exactly what MUN is for. It's about adaptation and it's about diplomacy. Next to
In gods, right? So we can't die. Right?
So actually, there's a little section in the background guide about how godly death works. About how godly death works. Basically, there's two ways that you can die. Your first way that you can die is the entire group, if 2/3 of the committee votes, they can kill you off. And basically you get banished to Tartarus and you can't really escape. So you just get assigned a new role, basically. RIP. don't get 2/3 of people to hate you. If we see this being abused, we'll obviously change this. And then our second rule is gods are obviously worshipped. We all understand that. So our tournament is operating under the belief that a god doesn't exist unless people believe in it. If people stop believing in the Greek gods, if people stop believing in Poseidon specifically, or Athena specifically, or Hermes specifically, that god ceases to exist. So you have to make sure that you have people who support you and people who believe in you. So those are the two ways you can die. From Best Delegate. Best Delegate has an article on the 3 notes you need to send at the beginning of every tournament. Your first note is setting backstory. Basically, you're going to establish your connections with people. Like he said, like, say it's a family connection to a mafia. Say it's, for you guys, maybe it's a specific person who worships you. Maybe it's an oracle that you know. Maybe it's, I don't know, some random dude in Athens who's just, like, really cool, you know? It's about setting your backstory and creating a narrative that's going to help you out later. One of the best things that I did was in Gatorman. I was a special agent, and I established myself as a spy for another person in the organization who was trying to get control. And so I used that person's connections to gain information. So 2, taking inventory. So this is just asking, like, in like an easiest way, like, yo, what I got. Don't just be like, do I have ship? Because we're just going to tell you don't have ship, because clearly you didn't research what type of ship. Like, you didn't care that much, so we're not going to care that much.
Do I have dinghy?
Yeah, like, no. Like, you're not going to have anything. We might hand you an oar if we're nice. But you're just going to have to ask us, like, do I have, like, if this were a more specific committee, it would be like, do I have any M16s? What kind of ships do I have? Is my naval base here? And also, you can't expect us to know every single thing. So, like, if you do more research than we do, we will probably give it to you.
I was gonna say, what if we tell you that we have something?
Look, as long as it doesn't seem crazy, we're fine. And even if it does seem crazy, but you can back it up with an article, I'm always okay with that. Like, if
Like,
some...
Are there any, like, no-nos?
So, I like to live my life by, if it doesn't violate the Geneva Convention, it's vibes. But most of the things you can do, most of us in Backroom are gonna allow it. I've decided my personal limit on people you can purposely kill is 40. You can purposely kill up to 40 civilians. No more.
Hey,
So, no genocides, but maybe a native tribe?
Maybe this was more so, I was just like, you know, if Zeus wants to, like, strike something with lightning and it kills, like, 10 people, I'm okay.
Give me
But-
more souls in the underworld, y'all.
But again,
Hypothetically, if like I create a monster and unleash it, and it kills like half of a country,
Is she responsible for
that's
the
not me. Yeah, that's not me. It's the
you
monster. I just made
be
the monster.
responsible for it. And 2, what if those people believed in you? Your negative consequence might be that you're dead now. Number 3, staying relevant. Obviously, it's your arc. It's how you're going to stay relevant to the story.
I have a question that shouldn't be that disruptive. So, if you're using your powers in a crisis note, and like, let's say you're Zeus or something, and you're trying to control the skies, right?
Yeah.
Would you just like write a crisis note like to the sky and just be like,
if you want to write it to the sky, go for it. One of my favorite things that I was able to do in Feynman is a lot of my crisis notes, and a lot of my joint crisis notes ended up being prayers to God himself or to Satan. You can write crisis notes, like, if you want to write it to this guy, like, I promise you, all of us in Backroom are going to have the most fantastic time on earth reading how you told this guy, like, whatever, have fun, like, I control you, I made it rain, not you, you know? A great piece of advice is asking questions that shift things in your favor. So say they walk in and your approval rating is awful. Everybody, like, hates the gods at this point. If your goal is to lead some kind of directive about how, like, we need to shift our policy and we need to seem better, you probably ask a question whether or not people are if people are against your idea currently or whether or not they're against your system as a whole, because that would tell you whether or not you need to write a directive on reshaping everything or just changing your policy. So you need to ask questions that are going to like shape the committee into your favor. So one word of advice. One word, okay? Multitask. The greatest thing you can do as a delegate is be both heavy in room and out room. Multitasking is the hardest skill of MUN, but it is the most essential. Like we hate to see as backroom, like here, like reading somebody's amazing crisis notes and loving them so much, and then finding out that they weren't speaking much. Because then we can't give you anything. We want to give you that award, and we want to tell you that you did fantastic. And we want to tell you that you were fantastic in room and fantastic out room. But being able to write something cool, like down, or being able to say something isn't the same as being able to do both. Because like a fantastic delegate can do both, and it's definitely possible. So yeah, in summary, speak, be compelling, write like your life depends on it, and have passion. If you guys have any questions for the last 5 minutes, I will step off my soapbox.
Next weekend, we're sending like notes and like directives and stuff over email, right?
Yes.
Over text.
Email. You guys will be emailing amhsmodun@gmail.com. It's in the background guide. There's a little section for it on how everything's going to be working logistics-wise. It's like in the very beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, you're totally true.
So are we going to have like, sorry,
Yeah, you're okay.
like a separate device to like email? Like, is it okay if we're like on our phone while the thing is there, be so that we can like write?
You can do it like that, or one of the things I suggest is like zooming on your computer, and so you're able to like both zoom on your computer and like be able to speak while also you're typing. We're also going to be accepting notes whenever they come in, up until like the point where it becomes too much, and then your chair will tell you like, hey, this is too much. But until then, it'll literally just, you'll be able to write whatever you'd like, send it to us, and then write another and send it to us. One of the things I've always noticed as a chair is if you write a note that's just a little too long, we're going to be a little worried about whether or not you actually wrote it there or you pre-wrote, because one of the things is like you need to be doing your work in committee and not outside. It's okay to plan. It's okay to like formulate your ideas, but not to the point where you're writing your notes. Does anybody else have any other questions?
So like,
Sorry.
go. I don't care. Whoever spoke before me.
So like, how formally should notes be written?
It's up to you, honestly. I would say like, I wouldn't use like slang and stuff, but if you're able to quickly communicate like an idea, you don't need to be fancy, and you don't need to be like, hello, my dear sir, how are you today? You and I have been acquaintances since the year 3094 BC. Like, you don't need to be annoying and pretentious. You can just write the way you normally would and get across your ideas. And if you're ever worried about how like your writing is going to come across, like at the bottom you can literally write like, this message does blank, and just write like what tone the writing is supposed to have. So one of the things that I did for Feynman is I was writing a newspaper, right? Like one of my portfolio powers that I created was I started the Proctor paper, where I would use it as a way to like brew unrest, right? And so I would write like this piece of writing has ensued like riots across the city, and it has created a new passion in like the residents of Salem. So like rather than go on for hours and hours about how like everything is doing, I just told them what it was supposed to do. Yeah. Yes.
How is it just gonna be? You know how like there's, you obviously know this, like there are mods and there are unmods. How is that gonna work?
Okay, so also I have linked on their Cypress-Bay's website. They like have a very big description of it that I didn't want to like copy from them. But basically, we're going to be running unmods on what is called a gentleman's unmod. A gentleman's unmod is everyone's allowed to speak, and they just kind of like speak normally. It's just not a chair is calling on them. Basically, before an unmod happens, everybody's going to break up into groups to discuss different things. So say like 4 of you guys want to talk about like an issue that's happening in like a break-off city. And then like 6 of you guys want to talk about like a natural disaster. 5 of you want to talk about just godly issues. You guys are all going to split up on your own. and will be in your own Zoom calls monitored by somebody in back room so that you guys can discuss those and write directives specific to yourself. Okay, so I'm seeing less than a minute on the Zoom.
All right, everybody, that was our full video. Thank you guys for getting to the end if you did. I wish you lots of luck, and if you are a delegate that's literally just like wanting to get into crisis, you can email our team at any time, aimhsmallun@gmail.com. We'll always be here for information, even if you're like some random dude who like has never like done it and is in like the middle of a random state. Like, just because, you know, we're from Florida doesn't mean we can't help you out. So yeah, bye guys.